When thinking about famous daredevils in history, the name Annie Edson Taylor probably isn't on the top of most people's lists, or even known at all. But this school teacher took on a challenge that most people today wouldn't even do. She decided to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel. Annie was born in 1838 in Auburn, New York. Although her father died when she was only 12 years old, he left behind enough money to keep the family living comfortably. When Annie grew up, she decided to become a school teacher and even completed a 4-year training course. It was during her training she met her husband David, who died shortly after their marriage in the Civil War. Taylor was a woman who didn't let a challenge stop her from trying. After her husband died, she traveled extensively, taking on odd jobs. Eventually, she ended up in Bay City, Michigan, with the goal of becoming a dance instructor. Unfortunately, the town didn't have a dance school established, so Taylor decided to open one herself. By 1900, Taylor had traveled around the country in pursuit of various jobs and ventures to maintain an income, but she was back in Michigan and running low on money. Annie was an astute woman, however, and decided to gain notoriety by becoming the first person to successfully go over Niagara Falls in only a barrel. While others had challenged the falls in boats, on tight ropes, and in one instance by trying to swim the Niagara just downriver from its treacherous falls, no one had ever dared go over in a barrel. Taylor read about a huge number of visitors expected in 1901 for the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, and saw an opportunity. Other noteworthy attempts to conquer the falls had been tried and failed by several others before and after her. In 1829, Sam Patch, a daredevil known for his jumps, leapt from a platform at the base of Niagara Falls and survived. He later attempted to jump from a higher point, but this attempt was fatal. In 1883, Captain Matthew Webb, famous for being the first person to swim the English Channel unaided, attempted to swim the Niagara Gorge and drowned. In 1920, Charles Stevens, a barber and stuntman, attempted to go over the falls in a barrel. He ignored the advice to test the barrel first and tragically died. And then in 1930, a man named George went over the falls in a barrel with his pet turtle, Sonny Boy. While he survived the plunge, he was later found to have suffocated inside the barrel, which had become trapped behind a curtain of water. In preparation for her attempt, Annie obtained a custom-made barrel for the trip, constructed of oak and iron. The barrel had been fitted with a leather harness and cushions to protect her body, and it was secured with 10 metal hoops and weighted with an anvil as ballast to keep it upright in the rapids. 2 days prior to Annie's big trip, a domestic cat was sent over the falls to test the barrel. The cat survived the plunge, and 17 minutes later, after she was found, Taylor posed with the cat in photographs. On October 24, 1901, her 63rd birthday, the barrel was put over the side of a rowboat and Taylor climbed in along with her lucky heart-shaped pillow. After screwing down the lid, friends used a bicycle tire pump to compress the air in the barrel. The hole used for this was plugged with a cork, and Taylor was set adrift near the American shore south of Goat Island. The river currents carried the barrel over the Canadian Horseshoe Falls, which has since been the site for all successful daredevil stunting at Niagara Falls. Rescuers reached her barrel shortly after the plunge. Taylor was discovered to be alive and relatively uninjured, except for a small gash on her head. The trip itself took less than 20 minutes, but it was some time before the barrel was actually opened. Taylor was helped out of the barrel by Carlisle Graham, her friend and the first man to run the rapids on a raft. After the journey, Taylor told the press, "If it was with my dying breath, I would caution anyone against attempting the feat. I would sooner walk up the mouth of a cannon, knowing that it was going to blow me to pieces, than make another trip over the falls." Once safe, she complained only of a soreness in her neck and shoulders, but her doctor prescribed strict bed rest and kept visitors to a minimum, fearing that she would be suffering from a brain fever, a Victorian malady marked by a headache, flushed skin, delirium, and sensitivity to light and sounds caused by emotional shock or excessive intellectual activity. While recuperating in bed, she received a letter with a proposal of marriage, which she promptly turned down. He briefly earned money speaking about her experience, but was never able to build much wealth. She wrote a memoir and returned to Niagara Falls to sell it. Her manager, Frank M. Russell, ran away with her barrel, and most of her savings were used towards private detectives hired to find it. It was eventually located in Chicago, only to be stolen again. Always looking for an angle to increase her revenue, Annie spent her final years posing for photographs with tourists at her souvenir stand, attempting to earn money from the New York Stock Exchange, briefly talking about taking a second plunge over the cataracts in 1906, attempting to write a novel, reconstructing her 1901 plunge on film, which was never seen, working as a clairvoyant, and providing magnetic therapeutic treatments to local residents. Taylor entered the Niagara County Infirmary in Lockport, New York on February 23rd, claiming her age to be 57. She died on April 29, 1921, aged 82, and was interred next to her friend and fellow daredevil, Carlisle Graham, in the Stunter's Rest section of Oakwood Cemetery in Niagara Falls, New York. Since she died penniless, public donations were sought to pay costs for her funeral, which was held May 5, 1921. She attributed her bad health and near blindness to her trip over the falls. It's worth noting that in the years following her stunt, laws were put in place on both the Niagara and Canadian sides of the border to try and keep others from following in her daring footsteps. Of course, that hasn't stopped people from trying anyway and facing heavy charges and fines if they survive.